Made it.
Hey, Matilda.
I can't see anyone.
Oh, the
Are you
microphone.
See you very well.
Yeah.
Yes, she is.
Hi. I don't see anyone.
Are you unmuted?
Yes,
Perfect. So where are you hailing from today?
now I see. Depot Bay.
Oh, nice.
Happily.
Oh, the mayor of Depot Bay is a very nice person. I really like talking to her.
Wonderful. What's her name? I might have to look
I
her
don't
up.
have, I got 30 different names in my head, but I will,
That's all
I
right.
will
No
text you her
worries.
name. I'll text you her information.
Who left their glasses?
Those are mine.
Thanks.
Okay.
Counselor Novak, this is Holly. If you change your view from speaker to gallery view, that will help. You'll be able to see all of
Oh,
that.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I guess I forgot how that works. Let's see. Where is that? Gallery.
That interim city manager in Kaiser.
Oh, he's a nice guy. I like him.
He's not bad.
We had a really nice conversation.
Yeah,
Did they
he's
finally
great.
get that settled?
So Wes Hare is the interim
Yeah,
city
okay.
manager. Yeah.
Yeah.
Took several months. to sort that out.
So we're on air now. And so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. We have a roll call, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Mayor Alex Johnson II,
Here.
Councilors Olson,
Here.
Novak,
Here.
Bartholomew,
Here.
Kopczynski, Bessie Johnson,
Here.
and Smith.
Here.
All members present, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Gabe. Business from the public. As of right now, there's no business from the public. So if anyone but persons that want you to speak and make a comment, you can submit it, written record or written comment in the register to speak. That's on the city's website. Appear in person at the meeting and register and speak on the sign-up sheet. So today at 4:10, the next agenda item is Salem to Albany Transit Service Study and recommendations by Barry Hoffman, Salem Transit and consultant, presentation information. You must be Mr. Hoffman? Thank you.
Hello, council. Hello, council. No.
I could hear him. Where's my expert at?
That's better. I'm here.
Okay, there you are.
Barry Hoffman, Transit Manager for the City of Albany, and I'm introducing Ted Stonecliffe and Steve Dickey from Chariots, who are here to present the findings from their study for the Salem to Albany, Albany to Salem service that a lot of you did participate in. So they'll have a consultant that'll do a presentation, and I'll let Ted tell you a little bit more.
You could have those mics work. Do the seated mics work? Yeah, go ahead and have a seat, please.
Mr. Mayor and fellow councilors, thank you for having us today. My name is Ted Stonecliffe. I'm a planner at Chariots, Salem Area Mass Transit District. We've been working with the City of Albany and the Albany Metropolitan Planning Organization on this project for the past 11 or 12 months. This is a feasibility study for public transit between Salem and Albany. And today we have our consultant, Jarrett Walker and Associates, who I believe are online, I'm hoping, to make the presentation. And there he is, wonderful. Gavin Pritchard is with Jarrett Walker and Associates and is joining us today from Portland to present our final recommendation. So I'll hand it over to Gavin. And we're here for questions at the end of the presentation.
Hello, Gavin. Please go ahead and proceed with your presentation.
Good. Hello. You can all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. All right. Let's see if I can get the share screen to work. Oh, is there a way to get share screen enabled?
You should have that ability now, Gavin.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Who was that?
So are you seeing a PowerPoint now?
Yes, we are.
Great. Okay. As Ted said, my name's Gavin Pritchard. I'm with Jarrett Walker and Associates. We're a transit consulting firm based out of Portland and Washington, D.C. The other person who was the primary help from Jarrett Walker on this was Michelle Pereira. I also want to thank Allison Brown and Tracy Height from JLA Public Involvement. They led the public involvement charge and were able to do a great job adapting everything to virtual with COVID and the multiple weather events that happened across the last year. So as Ted said, this is a Salem-Albany corridor feasibility study that between Chariots, the city of Albany, and the AAMPO were all involved in it. Here is the recommended service at the end of this study. You can see it's proposed 9 stops connecting Salem and Albany, as well as Jefferson and Millersburg. So this route would connect all 4 cities and create new connections and opportunities that are currently not possible via transit today. Our recommended route would be for a weekday all-day service as well as Saturday service. This would allow for riders to use this transit route for more than just rush hour commutes. This would also help fill in a gap in the statewide transit network. Currently, you can get between Salem and Albany via Amtrak and Point Bus, but it's a higher fare. So this would be a low fare option, as well as creating new connections with Jefferson and Millersburg. So as I said before, this route would serve, or this proposed route would serve midday and Saturday. The schedule on the left is a conceptual schedule. It's in the report. It's not as important that you're able to read it. Mostly it's just to give an idea of how this route could be scheduled. So this would be 6 daily weekday trips and then 4 trips on Saturday that go throughout the day. These trips would be on a 2.5-hour frequency, and by having the bus come every 2.5 hours, the corridor would be able to be served by 1 bus going back and forth. We also showed in the report an alternative schedule, which you could have a couple direct trips between Salem and Albany that would be slightly faster by skipping Millersburg and Jefferson. A lot of the report, we focus on creating a proposed route that's adaptable. So as things move forward and a potential pilot gets created, it could be changed to fit what's best for the ground in the year that it's designed. Looking at some potential stop locations, one thing important to note is that this would be a commuter express as defined by the FTA. So one of the restrictions on that is you have to have a limited number of stops in each city that you pass through, or else you trigger paratransit requirements of a standard transit bus. So for Salem, some potential stop locations we identified: the Downtown Transit Center in Salem. This would allow for connections with Chariot's other regional routes, as well as the local Chariot's route. A stop near the Salem Hospital, which is also walking distance to the Salem Amtrak station. A stop around 12th and 13th in McGilchrist would provide access to Social Security offices in Salem. And then in the south side of Salem, connecting with the South Salem Transit Center, which is being created at this time, but this would let local connections to Chariot system on the south side of town. In Jefferson, we identified a potential stop at Jefferson City Hall and Library. A single central stop would allow Jefferson New Transit, and also you could have some nicer bus stop amenities being near City Hall. In Millersburg, we identified a couple stops. A lot of these stops would require some safety infrastructure for pedestrians to be installed. For the most part, these are safe crossings across Old Salem. But we identified Old Salem and Morningstar, or Old Salem and Conser as potential locations, as well as ATI Metals as a potential job site that could benefit from having transit. Again, it would need some safety infrastructure placed. It's important to think about with transit, if you don't have a safe way to cross the street, it effectively becomes a one-way service because you can get there, but then you're trapped when you try to leave. For Albany, we identified Pacific Boulevard and Killdeer. This would provide access to stores including Winco and Costco, and would provide a connection for residents of Millersburg and Jefferson to reach that, as well as Albany Station, which would connect into the current Albany transit system, as well as the Lynn Benton Loop, the Coastal Valley Express, the Lynn Shuttle, in addition to the Point Bus and Amtrak services. Looking at coverages and costs from this proposed route, you can see these new stops would provide access to nearly 20,000 residents and 40,000 jobs within a half mile of these stops. And a lot of these would be people that currently don't have access to transit at all for Jefferson and Millersburg. When we looked at potential operating costs, you can see we showed a couple ways it could break down if you wanted to run 5 or 6 daily weekday trips. We also used Chariot's projected 2021 numbers or 2022 dollars to estimate what this cost would be, as well as using Chariot's current regional bus as an example for what a bus purchase would be. As far as the process itself, you can see we've been running, as Ted mentioned, since fall of 2020. We had 2 phases of public outreach. The first phase was more about key choices and abstract, asking the public what they would want out of transit along the corridor, what times of day they think transit should run, what key connections they would like. For the second phase, we worked with Chariot's, the city of Jefferson, Millersburg, Albany, and AMPO to design 2 different service alternatives. And then for the second phase of outreach, we took those alternatives to the public using an online open house, which is an interactive web page that would allow the public to engage with the ideas and learn about them before giving their opinion in a survey. So just real quickly, the 2 alternatives that we presented that led to the recommended route, the Express on the left mimics much more closely what the current Amtrak or Point bus service is, with just a direct connection between Salem and Albany. The intercity route, which the recommended ended up being closer to, shows the additional connections to Jefferson and Millersburg along the corridor. And so looking to see what the public said when we asked after the second round of public engagement if they felt the express service alternative would benefit their community or others, people were in agreement. When we asked the same question in terms of the intercity route, you can see that agreement was much stronger. And then when finally asked if they had to choose between the 2 alternatives, which route they thought best served the needs and those of their community, the intercity route had 63% support. So with that, if there's any questions or discussion, I should also say the report has more detail and facts on both the public engagement and the recommendation.
Mike? Your mic on?
I do have a couple of questions. I guess on your page that you showed the cost breakdown, can we switch back to that slide?
Yes.
That one right there. The 5-day and 6-day, it says 5 daily weekday trips plus 4 Saturday trips. Then you have 6 daily weekday trips and 4 Saturday trips. So you're adding Sunday to it, or what's the extra day between 5 and 6?
That would be one additional day, one additional trip during weekdays. So the bus would go back and forth 6 times. So it would mean
Okay,
most likely an additional.
I'm misinterpreting what that. I think it's not days; it's daily trips, actual trips. Okay, got that. My bad. And then the breakdown that you have for the surveys that you took. How many people were actually involved with that? Is it a survey of 25 people or 250 people? It makes a difference on how the percentages break out.
I do not have those numbers in front of me. I know we had a public engagement memo, so we can get you those numbers.
I can
I don't know
say,
if Ted knows those off.
I can just say anecdotally, for the first meeting, we had between 75 and 80 people participate, and the second meeting, I believe, was a little bit more, but yeah, we'd have
Okay, it was a fair number
So-
sampling then.
under 100, but
Yeah,
a fair,
okay,
fair
thank you.
number for online.
So were those primarily Albany residents, Millersburg residents, or Jefferson residents?
Gavin, do you recall? I believe it was a fair mix between Salem, Albany, Jefferson, and Millersburg. But yeah, did we collect that information?
It'd be nice to know.
Yeah, I believe we have it in the public engagement memo that we created. From what I remember, it was a fair mix. There were more from Albany and Salem, but we did get especially from Jefferson, a lot of comments about the benefit that transit would be to their community.
So will you be presenting this same slide set to Jefferson and Millersburg?
Yes, I believe that's true. As Gavin said, yeah, slightly heavier load from the larger cities, but
Okay.
there were still at least 10 or 12 from Jefferson, and maybe a little under that from Millersburg.
Thank you.
Okay, the funding strategies for this are?
Gavin, would you like to cover that, or would you like me to?
I think you might be better positioned
Okay,
to answer
sure.
that.
So there are many different options for funding. We do have a whole page on funding in the report, and I apologize for not supplying this to you in your packet, but we can get the final recommendation to everybody here. I'll get it to Barry, and he can distribute it to you.
Thank you.
In general, we'd be looking at various sources of state and federal funding, existing funding sources, not new funding sources. Currently, there's the Special Transportation Fund and Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund. So STF and STIF, you know, leave it to ODOT to come up with these confusing acronyms. But the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund, or STIF, is a payroll tax that started in 2019 and has been largely associated with many expansions that have been statewide for transit service. This is a growing source of revenue as long as the economy is doing well. And it's a 2-year cycle. Right now, we're in the middle of the cycle, and the next application period comes up in 2022 for the funding to start in 2023. So the earliest that a new project or a new route could be funded under this source of funding would be 2023.
And any of this would be in collaboration with Salem?
Yes, so the way the funding is distributed, there are what's called qualified entities. Salem Chariots is the qualified entity for Marion and Polk counties, and Lynn County is the qualified entity for Albany and all of Lynn County. So we would be working with the STIF Advisory Committee, and Barry could talk more about that. Our advisory committee makes recommendations to our board of directors, who are that entity that would approve the funding ultimately. Ultimately, it would be approved by the Oregon Transportation Commission.
So the local metropolitan planning organizations don't get themselves involved with this at all?
They do not. They can write letters of support and that sort of thing, but they are typically not, unless they are in charge of running transit in their jurisdiction, which most MPOs are not. They typically are not involved with the application.
Thank you.
Councilor Smith, you're part of this committee, aren't you?
I am not.
You're not, aren't you? Is it you?
You're
Of
right,
the
you're on
MPO?
the
Your PO?
Yes.
You
Yeah,
are, okay.
that's why I was asking.
Okay. So council, what would you like to do?
Well, I'd like to get more information to get the final report, and I like what I'm seeing so far. Absolutely, there's no question about that. I think it's quite well thought out, and I think there's a need. I hear that more often than not. So I'd like to see more and see if we can make this happen somehow.
Yeah, I would really appreciate a copy of that report.
Absolutely, we'll get that right to you.
So I think you can provide it to Gabe and we'll get it. He'll get us copies of it. Is there anything else, gentlemen? Anything else?
I believe that's all.
Would you like to hear about some of the other funding options? That is one funding source. I didn't mention the federal funding sources that are available. There are, through the Federal Transit Administration, there are different grants that are available. Currently, there's a statewide process to combine what's called the Special Transportation Fund and the STIF Fund. And it's a complicated process, but once these sources are combined, it'll be clearer what that funding level will be. For the federal side, maybe Steve would be better to talk about this. Steve, would you like to come up and? He's our expert of funding sources.
Yes, there are a number of federal funding sources available. There's a federal source that is targeted specifically to areas that are outside of urbanized areas, that is a funding for that it can be used for operational expenses as well as for capital and planning expenses. One of the things that where the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, can play a part in is if there is a need for capital expenditure to purchase a vehicle or to make improvements within the urbanized areas. So the Albany MPO does have a little bit of a unique characteristic in that it covers Albany, but it also includes Jefferson, which is in Marion County. So that is one of the areas that we have some unique opportunities to work with both sides of that, where Jefferson would be within the Chariots area of oversight under this statewide transportation improvement fund program that Mr. Stonecliffe had mentioned earlier. But also the Albany area MPO would be eligible to, if they selected some of their state or their surface transportation block grant program, which used to be the Surface Transportation Plan, the STPU dollars, to target to support the program. So it could be something that would be available through those funding streams as well. I know that our MPO up in the Salem-Keizer area transportation study, otherwise known as SCATS, they have allocated funds to transit projects in the past to purchase buses or fund transit stop improvements at times. The other stream of funding is there is a section of the Small City and Rural Program that is dedicated for intercity services as well. And those funds would be another source of federal funding that can be utilized. And those are particularly designed to support services that will connect community to community or metropolitan areas to other metropolitan areas to help to alleviate some of the commute traffic that occurs, or the need to access critical services that one area may have that another might not. So those are some additional funding streams. And of course, we have a transportation bill that is currently being debated in Congress that we don't know what all is going to be included in that, but often those will repackage some of those programs to allow sometimes greater flexibility in how those existing programs are utilized. And in other cases, they'll create a few more silos in those arenas. It is important to recognize that any project like this, it takes often a combination of funding streams to be able to meet the capital needs and then the ongoing operational expenses. And it is also something that can be scaled as well. So the proposal and the plan showed at one level 5 trips per day for 5 days a week and some trips on Saturday. The other one showed 6. If you were only able to get enough funding to do, say, 3 round trips a day, a morning and evening and a midday, that would be a very minimal amount, because then you have only one choice in the morning and the evening for your commute time and one midday. But there are a lot of opportunities to scale based on the resources that are available as well.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Councilor Olson?
Do you consider parking at the places where you're having your stops? I know one time I was planning to take the train up to Seattle, and talking to the station guy here in Albany, I asked him how our ridership was here. He said it was pretty good. And he said some people from Salem were coming down here because we had enough parking here in Albany that they could park their car. And not only that, they could park it for free. So I'm wondering about some of the places where you're going to have stops. Are there places where people can leave their cars, and are you considering that? And second, it would help if you didn't have the mask on. I'm kind of handicapped with tinnitus, and I have a hard time understanding you when you have your mask on. Hey, you look better too.
Yeah, I feel comfortable being this at this distance, given the current circumstances with the mask removed. The consideration for parking is always something that we need to do in cooperation with the local jurisdictions, and some of that is dependent upon what the location for the stops are and the adjacent businesses, the adjacent parking, and the adjacent availability of property that could be dedicated to park and ride facilities. But some of those things are really steps that we would look at from when we get into really the next phase. So this is a phase where we looked at, if we had the funding, is this something where there would be a need for this and a demand for this? The next phase would be actually getting into, okay, what are those specific locations for stops? What are the parking amenities, the passenger waiting amenities, even the pedestrian access amenities? I mean, one of the things we mentioned was a stop that is located closer to the Social Security office. That was a big frustration for us in Salem, where the Social Security office used to be located 1 block away from our downtown transit center. Very convenient for quite a number of buses to come in, and they could access that office. They moved it to a new location that has no sidewalks. It's in a flood zone between that building and the nearest bus stop, and you have to walk across the main UP Burlington Northern rail line as well to get over there. Very busy street, heavy industrial traffic, and even though we even had our congressional delegation contacting them saying this really isn't a good idea, then they doubled down and put the Veterans Clinic over there as well. But it is the closest location that we have service, and part of the reasons we don't even have transit service on that route is because there are no sidewalks, and if you actually stopped a bus, you would step out of the bus and into a ditch. So that really doesn't work, and it is a project that's on the City of Salem's capital improvement list, but it actually entails raising the entire roadway because it's below flood grade right now. So it's a very expensive project.
Is that it?
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Bartholomew?
I was just wondering about the buses, because are they going to be diesel, or what kind of fuel will they be using?
Well, one of the things that we as an agency are working and are progressively working towards is right now 100% of our fleet is alternative fuel. So we operate either on biodiesel or compressed natural gas. Now, we also were successful in receiving 2 subsequent years of funding to purchase 10 battery electric buses as we transition through retiring some of our older buses, our older diesel buses. We are moving towards more sustainable funding, not funding, well, that would be nice too, but more sustainable fuels or powering of those vehicles in a way that has less of an impact on the environment. And that is something that is part of our board of directors policy, is to move in that direction. Again, that's another one of those details of specifically which type of bus and size and design that we would get more into once we got into the actual planning of the service.
And one additional question, when was this supposed to begin, the transportation, this bus line?
Well, as Mr. Stonecliffe mentioned, the earliest we would have funding available would be in later 2023 because of the funding cycle, and it probably would be more likely to be the following year because once the funding is secured, it typically takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months to get a transit vehicle that would be dedicated to that. So unless we happen to catch the cycle just right to where we had one that had some decent life left in it that we could start the service with while we were waiting for the others, you would have that little bit of a lag just because of how long it takes once you place a bus order for it to actually be delivered.
Councilor Johnson?
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, I was on one of the initial meetings that they had, and I think all the participants were really excited about this because a lot of people don't have the access to a vehicle and there's no bus service, and so they're just kind of stuck with trying to find someone to take them somewhere. And so this has been very positive as far as I know, and I think it'd be great. It'd maybe save some traffic on I-5 and allow people to, especially the hospital, I kind of like that idea, and stopping at Millersburg too, at ATI, because, if people get used to it, they may decide that a bus isn't a bad way to go. So I think it's a great idea.
Councilor Kopczynski? I'm just going around the room. Councilor Novak, do you have anything? Okay. Councilor Smith? I have a couple things. The crossings at Millersburg, from a safety perspective, foul weather, darkness, is there going to be lighted places for people to be so they don't get hit by a bus or a car? So has that been planned into this?
That certainly has been taken into consideration. That's one of the details that we would definitely need to be worked out with the city of Millersburg before we would even consider placing stops at that location, due to those very facts. As you know, even though I believe the posted speed through there is it 40 or 45?
It's 45, I believe.
That it's frequently the traffic travels at a higher speed than that, and being of a more of industrial area, the visibility is not always the best, and you do have also trucks that are entering the roadway at that time. So it is something that we will need to work with them and find the ways that will meet the MUTCD, the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, to establish safe pedestrian crossings and elimination and safe places for the passengers to wait.
Okay, thank you. Second thing, ADA compliance. Will the buses be accessible to people with mobility devices, seniors with walkers, and things like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're 100% ADA compliant, and we don't even give consideration to anything that doesn't meet those requirements.
Okay. Thank you.
And that would also go for the construction standards of any of the bus stops as well.
That's fine. Thank you very much for that. So we'd like to hear more. Have them come back to us.
So I did actually have a question that I thought of, and I have my
Go
hand
ahead.
raised,
Go-
but
Go ahead, Councilor Novak.
thank you kindly. I'm just curious as to the choice of ATI for a stop. Is that in order to encourage people who normally drive there for work to take the bus instead? Or I'm not clear on the reasoning.
We typically look at locations where there's a large number of employees to give them an option to be able to use the bus to
Okay.
go to and from rather than that. And especially in areas with heavy industrial traffic, one of the things that transportation professionals will talk about is you have a balance between the people that need to come to go to those places, but also the freight movement. And the more commuter traffic you have, then the more competition you have with your freight movement, and it becomes a challenge for freight to actually move move quickly and efficiently. I used to manage the system in Wilsonville, which had a large amount of freight movement, and that was one of the challenges there was you get a lot of commuters moving, and all of a sudden your trucks are sitting, and that's money that needs to be on the road getting to the market or providing the supplies to the facilities down the road that needs those supplies to continue doing the work that they're doing.
Did that answer
Thank
your
you.
question, Counselor?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Counselor, what would you like to do? Have him come back?
Proceed.
Go ahead and proceed forward. We believe that we're going to go ahead and move forward with this. I think you're okay to go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we certainly will keep everyone in the loop on progress on this as well.
We greatly appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is IGA Intergovernmental Agreement, City of Albany for jail space. Director Yeager's going to speak to us on page 3, that through 10 on your document.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We've talked about this before during the budget process, and we'd like to move forward with an IGA with the City of Lebanon to provide jail services. We'll be bringing this back to you on Wednesday and asking you to approve this IGA through resolution. Currently, Lynn County doesn't have the space for us to either send people who have been sentenced or to hold people for us who maybe don't want to show up at court. And so would like to pursue this IGA for 2 jail beds. It would give us 2 beds that is for our use. And the cost would be about $47,450 a year. We've already put that into the current biennial budget. Tonight, we would just like to take any questions that you might have. I have September, who is our court supervisor, and I have Diane Merzinski, who is our contracts and procurement specialist.
Counselor Kopczynski?
Yes, just to refresh my memory, reading through the discussion, talks about Lynn County having half the capacity because of COVID. I'm presuming that's going to be opening up over time, I guess. So I'm struggling with why would we give a contract to Lebanon for 2 beds if they've got the beds rather than giving it to Lynn County? Well, I mean, give it a closer proximity to house the people.
Well, we certainly hope that sooner than later we can start going back to Lynn County. However, at this time, they're not planning on opening any beds for us because they have a backlog of court cases too where they'll need to use those.
So, and the funding for this is budgeted out, it's in the budget current right now?
It's in the current
Thank you.
budget.
Thank you.
Any other Counselor? Oh, Counselor Johnson?
Yeah, I was wondering, is this about the same cost as Lynn County? Is it more or less? I see it's about $4,000 a month, so I just wondered. And this is if we use them or not.
This is whether we use them or not.
Okay.
So for Lynn County, I can have September come up and maybe talk to this a little bit. We currently pay Lynn County for, can you explain how we pay Lynn County?
September, you'll have to activate your mic.
So currently with Lynn County, we have 5 free beds a day. And anything over that, we pay a minimum booking charge for. So this, I mean, I think for per year, this is probably what we spend with Lynn County, but we're not getting as much and not as many beds for the money as we do with Lynn County. So
I'm sorry, so do they have, I mean, how many beds do they have? I didn't know Lebanon had that big of a jail.
I think they have 10,
Oh.
and we would be getting 2 of
We get
them.
a fifth of them. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're about the same amount, but for 3 less beds. Okay.
We do have a termination clause in the IGA so that when Lynn County does open up again, we can give 30 days notice and terminate that IGA.
All right, thank you.
So this is not a yearly thing, it's just month to month, or?
We currently have it open So I think we are planning on this biennium potentially, but we do have a 30-day termination clause. So if Lynn County suddenly surprises us and opens up and we can send people there, we can terminate the IGA with Lebanon.
Counselor Smith?
Are we sending any of our prisoners to Lynn County Jail right now? We're not. Are we allowed to do that or not?
If we have a person that we're having a lot of problems with, they have said they would be willing to take them. So they are currently holding one person for us right now that has been causing a lot of issues in the city. But other than that, no. I think that's the only person they've taken from us since.
It's an extraordinary circumstance rather than
Yes.
something we can count on.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that cost includes transportation? The Lebanon money, that includes transportation for that period as well? Or is that extra?
Our officers have to transport
Okay,
to and from.
over there. Okay. All right, any other counselors have any questions? So would you like her to bring it, would you like the director to bring it back on Wednesday?
Yeah. Well, we've got the resolution right here.
It's in the agenda package.
It's in the
It's
agenda
in the
packet.
packet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll bring it back Wednesday, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, may I point out that just since the beginning of the pandemic, the jail has been able to hold for us at a threshold that much higher than was before. So what September's saying is that the crimes that were committed have to be much more serious than what they are now. So
Right.
we've had no recourse for lower level crimes at all since that policy took hold.
Thank you. Thank you, September. See you Wednesday night. That's done. Next on the agenda is Citizens Advisory Groups, City Manager Peter Trotzen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor and councilors. Boards and commissions, as we've talked about before, provide advice and emphasis on issues of importance to the council and to the city, and they provide opportunities for community engagement and involvement. We have 18 boards and commissions at this time, and following a review of boards and commissions in 2018, late 2018 and early 19, council directed staff to submit an ordinance and 2 resolutions that brought most of the city's citizen advisory groups, as we call them, into alignment in terms of number of members, residency requirements, and ward appointment processes. We have some experience in that recruitment cycle now, and so far the updated process has worked well. At that time, council was also interested in any opportunities for consolidation that might be available and asked for a review with that goal in mind. Earlier this year, the current council has also requested a review of boards and commissions with the intent of perhaps consolidating some functions, some groups, with a view toward being more efficient in how we manage these important groups. This initiative was requested in recognition of the fact that each citizen advisory group is supported by at least 2 FTE, a staff liaison and a minutes taker, and they meet several times a year, some more often than others. Council was acknowledging that good stewardship requires that we periodically review each of these groups. With Mary Diddle's help, we've prepared this list showing you a summary of the citizen advisory groups that currently serve the city of Albany. Now, let me see if I can plug in this code here, if this works. There we go. Okay, so in performing this review, we want to try to simplify the issue as much as possible. So here you see the 18 groups that I talked about. Our approach was first to remove from consideration those boards and commissions which were either one, required by law, or two, otherwise required by a compelling business reason. So let's go. And I would ask you to feel free to stop me at any point. There's an element of subjectivity here. So let me know if you disagree or want to visit any one of these any more than the others. So first, you'll see the Budget Committee. It's the fourth line down. This committee is required by law. So I'm going to remove this as if by magic. Second, the Building Board of Appeals. This group meets very infrequently. They're the next line down. But we need an appeals body for building issues. Next, the CARA Advisory Board is required as long as we have an urban renewal district. Let's remove this from consideration. The Landmarks Commission is required for Albany to retain its designation as a certified local government in the National Park Service's Federal Preservation Program. Certification requirements include appointing an Historic Preservation Commission, which the Landmarks Commission serves as. The Library Board is required by law, as is the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission Hearings Board is also seldom used, but it's required by our municipal code to hear all contested cases referred to it by the Community Development Director or the Planning Commission. It's convened when a public hearing is required by the code, but also when public interest is low. 3 planning commissioners sit on this board, and another serves as an official alternate. The Community Development plans to make more use of this group going forward. And finally, the Albany-Millersburg Joint Water and Wastewater Management Committee is required by an IGA with Millersburg. Let's click that. Now, before we move to the next slide, I want to mention that Council has recently received a suggestion to go in the other direction and create another committee. And this would be a Disability Rights Committee. However, it's worth noting that the HRC, the Human Relations Commission, an existing group, has as its mandate, and I quote, to strengthen and celebrate every resident of Albany by being committed to the philosophy of acceptance, inclusion, equal opportunity, accessibility, dignity, and fair treatment for all. The HRC will work to ensure that historically marginalized and underrepresented people and communities have equal access to city programs and services and representation in city decision-making. So we're left with a much shorter list. There you go. 10 citizen advisory groups, and a more manageable list when we consider consolidations. As we reviewed the list and spoke with staff, there were 3 possibilities that seemed to make some organizational sense. Combining the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission with the Traffic Safety Commission, combining the City Tree Commission and the Parks and Recreation Commission, and subsuming the work of the TLT Commission into the Budget Committee. Now, these options are certainly available to you. You notice that they're labeled options, not recommendations, because this is something for you to discuss, deliberate, and provide feedback on, because these boards and commissions exist for your benefit to provide you with advice and recommendations. So this afternoon, I'd like you to direct further study into any of these options, or if you have a suggestion that we haven't considered here, please let me know. And in doing so, remember again that the purpose of these groups is to provide advice and recommend action to the council. And at this point, any questions, concerns, discussion, or direction?
I didn't mean to jump the queue. I like this. I like all 3 of these suggestions. Beginning with number 1, I strongly support that, combining traffic safety with bicycle and pedestrian, because it would affirm and reinforce the idea, the fact that bicycles are vehicles, they are traffic, pedestrians are traffic of another sort, and all need to be accommodated in a safe manner. And when roads are built, when bike lanes are built, when people let their shrubs grow across sidewalks, all of those affect the flow of traffic and public safety. And I think that this is a natural combination. Moving to Parks and Recreation and the Tree Commission, the Parks and Recreation Department is responsible for the trees in the community, the street trees, the trees in parks, and there are thousands of them. The city forester is a Parks and Recreation employee. The urban forestry program is how the trees are managed, and I think that would broaden the number of people who are exposed to the importance of trees in the community, and perhaps give some different perspectives on tree management and just the ongoing importance of the urban forest. And it just makes sense. I think it's a better use of time in both cases. In coming finally to the TLT committee, excuse the emotional outburst there. That from a long time ago when I was a newspaper reporter, I covered city budget committee meetings that sometimes would spend days, not an hour at one meeting, but days, talking about how to spend the TLT money, with an entire parade of people coming and begging for their portions of it for different decent programs. The TLT money is part of the city budget. It comes into the city coffers, and we spend it according to state law and according to local need. It belongs in the budget. It belongs with the budget committee like everything else. I welcome public input on how that money might be spent, particularly on the tourism portion of it, which is the bulk of it. But I do believe that is just another portion of the budget. That's Maryland talking. So feel free to disagree with me.
Thank you, Councilor Smith.
You're welcome.
Councilor Johnson?
Okay. I think Councilor Smith said it very well. Okay, where did it go? I have the whole council here. I agree with everything. Was the TLT committee, was that the one that was formed a couple of years ago to make sure, there was some controversy here and there of what it was, and so I'm just wondering if that is, I don't think there's a problem with just putting it in the budget, because we deal with it anyway, and if I remember correctly, and I think maybe Dick, you'd remember, and you too, Ray, it was almost pushed on to us as to what the TLT committee was going to do. They had money to spend or didn't have money to spend, where it was going to go, and it was kind of I don't know, it was an issue committee, I think. And so I don't have a problem putting it with the budget. But a question I have is, if we combine these, does that mean both committees have the same people and they all meet as one?
No, that's why I said to incorporate the TLT committee functions into the budget committee. And even that's not perfectly accurate, because what the budget committee does is review the budget that's submitted by the budget officer. So, and on numbers 1 and 2, when you say combine those commissions, you don't all of a sudden get a 14-member commission.
That's what I was wondering.
You remember one of the things that we were trying to accomplish was to reduce a little workload on the council as well, in terms of having to identify a number of nominees to different commissions.
Yes.
So this would reduce by, 21, the number of people you'd have to nominate.
Yeah, and so how would that happen? If we combined them, would it be like at the beginning of next fiscal year, at the end of this calendar year, or how?
Well, what I would ask you to do tonight is if this is something you want to pursue, let me know that. We'll put some meat on the bones and we'll come back to you with a suggestion for how we would do it. I think it's inevitable that it would be phased in, but nothing can happen overnight in terms of changes to them. But we would phase it in and would come back with a recommendation for how to do that.
We're the government. We can't do things. No.
Some things we can do.
No, I really I like the combinations, and I think the TLT commission going into the budget committee, I think that's what we were doing to begin with before the committee was actually formed.
So,
And
so I have a question. Why was it formed in the first place? I see Matilda. I see Councilor Novak.
Yeah, some counselors, past counselors had issues with how the money was spent, where it was going. And they says, well, let's have a committee to talk it over, and then they would, I can't remember if they brought it back to us, and we agreed, I'm not sure, but yeah, it was, people didn't agree with how the money was being spent. That's all I can say.
It started out as a work group and then it became an
Yeah,
advisory
okay.
commission.
Yeah,
So,
all right.
Councilor are you finished, Councilor
I'm
Johnson?
finished, yes, thank you.
Councilor Kopczynski?
Okay, and then Councilor Novak.
Oh, no, I saw her.
Just a question for the city manager. Can you flip back to the screens where we showed the, the descriptions and everything? Okay. Refresh my memory, what the acronyms are, the PNR, PW, the CD, all of those things.
That is simply the department that staffs that commission. So Albany Arts Commission is staffed by Parks and Recreation.
Okay,
Landmarks is staffed by Community Development.
okay, okay, all right. Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Councilor?
No, I'm good.
You good? Councilor Novak?
Thank you. I am in agreement with the combinations on number 1 and 2. I only hesitate with regard to the TLT issue in that I would like to get input from Rebecca at the Albany Visitors Association and also Lisa Grotto at the ADA. I don't understand absolutely everything about everything with regard to how these committees even came into existence in the first place or how much bearing that has. But I would like to make sure that that the Albany Visitors Association still has significant input with regard to this. I don't want to see that taken away from them because I think they do a ton for our city with regard to getting the word out about who we are and what makes Albany great and why people should come here. And I want to make sure that nothing will hinder their ability to get whatever funding they can from TLT and continue to do the good work that I have always known them to do. I just in no way want to see that their ability to do what they do, if that would be hindered by combining it or putting that into the budget committee, I would be not so much for it. But if they can continue to have the funds to do what they've been doing, then I would probably be okay with that. But I want to reach out to both of those women with regard to that, if that makes sense.
It does. So,
Thank you.
Councilors, thank you, Councilor Novak. Councilor Bartholomew?
I also, I'm of like mind with the other counselors, and those recommend or options for our consideration have been, are just make sense. They go together and all of those different ones. So, and why not? Why not consolidate and make less work?
Yeah, I'd like the city manager to put the meat on the bones and bring it back to us as how this could be
Well,
accomplished.
let me get Councilor Olson in here first. Councilor Olson?
Yes, yeah. As far as the TLT committee is concerned, I find that our budget committee does very, very little discussing of what's going on in the city. And I find that the entities that are supported by the Transit Lodging Tax, TLT, particularly the Albany Visitors Association, I think it would be very easy for the Budget Committee to just shortchange them without thinking twice. And there are other entities that are served by Transit Lodging Tax. We have the Monteith House. We have the Albany Downtown Association. And I'm sure I'm leaving somebody else out. I think there are others. And I would like to see those stay separate from the Budget Committee. We get a lot of volunteer help from the entities that are supported by the TLT. And I think as our monetary capabilities continue to shrink, I think the more volunteer help we get, the better. So I would like to see the TLT committee stay separate.
Mr. Mayor, I guess I should make a point of clarification too, that transient lodging tax by law has to be spent in a certain percentage on tourism. So there's no danger of that going away. There's a question about whether it's 53% or 70% or somewhere in between. And that depends on an unanswered question with respect to how city monies were spent in 2003 when the Lynn Expo Center was built. But you should know, or you should remember, that you cannot spend a large percentage of that money on anything but tourism promotion.
Yeah, I was thinking it was more like somewhere in about 90%.
No. If you were to start a transient lodging tax today, I think it would be 90%. But since ours has been in existence for a long time, it's grandfathered in at a certain rate.
Yeah, but I think going down to 50, well, here again, we're having an argument about it right now. And I think 50% is too low.
So,
Yeah. In Washington State, it happens to be 100%.
So I'd like to chime in. I'm okay with this, options 1 and 2. I do like the fact that the Transit Lodging Tax Committee meets regularly. The Budget Committee only meets 3 or 4 times a year. So I think having that input or having that visibility monthly for me is with the TLT Committee makes absolute sense. And I would like to get the question answered about what actual dollar amount is supposed to be, or percentage is supposed to be spent. 'Cause I've heard 73%, 70%, 53%. I'd like to get that cleaned up so we have the same language going forward. But I'm okay with options 1 and 2. But I would like to see the retention of the TLT committee. But I'd also like to get more input from them as far as what they have going on with those dollars. And I know Rebecca Bond, the executive director, keeps me in the loop because I'm on the board as he liaison. But I think the council in general would like to know more from them. Councilor Johnson.
You're saying that you get a report from the TLT committee. Well, I've never seen a report from the TLT committee.
Or
I don't hear anything about the liaisons.
No, they have sent it out. And we can get a hold of their last one for you.
Yeah, because that was one of very few that I haven't gotten. But, yeah, so, and then if they do, okay, these are different than the outside agencies that we used to have. Is that correct? The outside agencies were like the
Willamette Criminal Justice
Boys and Girls
Council,
Club and all that type of thing, where they used to send us the reports at the end of what they did with the money. And
we used to provide grant support to the Boys and Girls Club and to the YMCA and to one other that I cannot recall.
The after-school programs, CAP, yes. Used to
Right,
too,
and that is different. What the transient lodging tax has traditionally or historically funded is AVA, ADA. I'm going to list these off to the best of my memory, but I'd ask Gina to chime in. Monteith House, Amadec, the Art and Air Festival, the Trolley, and a few others. But of course, during the pandemic, TLT was a source of funding that dropped incredibly, down by 85% initially. So it's been very tough for those agencies in the last year and a half.
Yes.
And in fact, we had to cut funding for Monteith House and Trolley and Art and Air Festival and so forth.
Yeah. Okay, well, that helps. Thanks.
Counselor Bartholomew, and then we're going to go to Counselor Smith, oh, excuse me, Counselor Olson and Counselor Smith.
I have my hand up as well.
Oh, I know, I saw it. So
Okay, thank you.
they were first, though. I saw them first, I'm sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. I just wanted to be recognized.
I appreciate the recommendations that we've been discussing, so I'm looking forward to the information coming back.
Okay.
So,
Counselor Olson.
Yeah, as far as the traffic safety and the bicycle and pedestrian commissions, I don't think bicycle and pedestrian are that concerned about safety. I think they're more concerned with encouraging people to use bicycles and things other than automobiles. So I can see a good reason to have separate committees there. And same way with the tree commission. I continue to get comments from my constituents. Why are they cutting down the trees? And I have to say, well, in the case of the old Sears building, now the government building, they're tired of raking leaves, so they want to get rid of the trees. Okay, so down they go. Hopefully we'll get a tree, people on the tree commission who will push back against cutting down trees, seems like everywhere. I hear now that there's a big push to take down trees on Washington Street. And is that,
Well,
going to do some street work on Washington Street?
I can't speak to Washington Street, but I can tell you it's not because they're tired of raking leaves. In fact, Albany is a tree city, USA, so we take great pride in that. And we have a forester who looks after our trees very well. But trees do have a habit of coming up and breaking sidewalks, which causes harm to people who are walking and liability for the city. So there are some good reasons why trees sometimes have to be controlled. But they also plant new trees too. And trees, like every other living thing, live, grow, and die. And unfortunately, sometimes they have to be cut down.
It usually takes 20, 30 years for a tree to provide any shade or really be a plus as far as our environment is concerned. So, and sidewalks can be repaired without removing the tree.
In some ways, yes.
In most cases. Too. So I would like to see those stay separate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Counselor Olson. Counselor Novak?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to inquire when it was mentioned that the AVA or the TLT funding, as we all know, was markedly decreased because of the pandemic. And it just made me wonder if there is any way of making that up to them financially with the money that we are receiving from the government or in any other way, because they lost a lot. And I know there have been monies given to other entities that were harmed during the pandemic. And I'm just wondering if there's any way that we can do anything to help the AVA in particular.
So I think that discussion is for another time, Counselor Novak. This is about whether or not we should keep the committee or merge it with the
Right, I
budget
know.
committee.
I do realize that. I only
Okay.
wanted to say it because it crossed my mind and I think it's important and I'm hoping we can consider that at another time. I
Right.
didn't mean to take us off topic.
Okay,
I
thank
think
you.
that it is somewhat on topic.
Thank you. We have a lot of agreement on there as well. Counselor Smith.
Counselor Smith has a list by now. Thank you very much. For the Counselor Novak's concern about ARPA funds or CARES funds for AVA, we are bringing back that.
The 26.
That discussion that we pulled from the last council meeting
Right.
for how to spend that money. Something that Counselor Olson said caught my attention also about how long it takes for trees to provide shade. my mother was very concerned about the ginkgo trees along Waverly Drive behind South Albany High School when she was still alive, and made fun of them because they were gangly. And in the course of the years that she lived at Quail Run, they grew tremendously. They leafed out, and the last time she saw them, she remarked on how lovely they were. So it did take a while, but you're right. And I was thinking of those of us who are not trees, take an incredible amount of years to develop common sense often. So it's kind of relative to me. But I do care about trees, and I've had trees cut down in my neighborhood in the last few years that I thought were healthy. I always call City Hall and find out, why is that tree coming down? And oftentimes it's breaking up a foundation. It's created a trip hazard in the sidewalk that can't be solved in any other way, or it's dead inside and you can't tell from the outside. So our staff does not cut down trees
Arbitrarily.
without a good reason. Two other things that started my list. I thank you, the city manager, for reminding us of the new language in the Human Relations Commission ordinance, spelling out very clearly that that commission addresses the needs and the rights of people with disabilities, and that we thought very long and hard when we put together that language, and I think it's in there, it's in our laws, that's a good place to address that issue. Regarding Councilor Johnson's concerns about how to combine these groups into something different, I think we could look to the language for the Landmarks Commission, the Planning Commission, and the Community Development Commission for inspiration for that. Those have specific areas of expertise assigned to most of the positions: a representative of a financial institution, a builder, something else, and we could look to a bicyclist, a pedestrian, an arborist, a logger, to fill notches to just cover those areas. The other thing that was on my list, what was it? Never mind. Oh, yes, I wanted another thing that Councilor Olson mentioned. The original title for the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission was the Bicycle Safety Advisory Commission. And I was a charter member, and I was the first chair, so I remember that. The name was changed to remove safety and add "and pedestrian" after a few years. But it was not devoted specifically to safety. It was devoted to all things related to bicycling as transportation. So thank you for letting me take all that time.
So thank you for Councilor Smith. So would it be more appropriate to change the traffic safety, and if we do the merge or the combination, to transportation safety, which is all forms of transportation?
That's something to consider.
It's something to consider. Instead of just traffic, it'd be transportation. So thanks for the discussion. I think that we'd like you to bring it back, City Manager Peter, and we'll talk about the TLT committee functions. It's in my opinion that they meet on a regular basis. I think the budget committee only meets a few times a year, and I think I should just keep that the way it is. But that's my opinion, just one person. Next on the agenda, do you have anything for us before we move on?
No.
So next on the agenda is business from the council. Let's start with the quiet one, Councilor Kopczynski.
A voice from the past or something like that. No, I'm all good.
Okay, good, thank you. Councilor Johnson?
I just want to say welcome back, Ray. I'm glad you got there and made it back safely. But other than that, I'll have to think about it and come back Wednesday.
Thank you very much. Councilor Bartholomew?
I went to 2 concerts on Teeth River Park last week, and they were quite different, and they were both lovely. Well, I guess I had a preference, definitely. I got to celebrate my birthday at one of them, and so it was a good times had by all, and I really am grateful that we're having those back.
Councilor Smith?
Nothing this evening.
Councilor Olson?
Nothing more tonight.
I have just a couple things. One, the concert with Smash Mouth was fantastic. I handed out 55 tokens for the carousel to little kids and 55 business cards, and I had great conversations with parents. And so I took a lot of selfies, my goodness. The people were excited. There was dancing, there was Shrek costumes. It was just full of energy and a lot of life downtown. Next thing was I went out to the home show at the fairgrounds, and there was a decent turnout the first 2 days. The last day wasn't that great, but there was traffic out there, so people are getting out. Some people wore masks, some people didn't wear masks, but people are being respectful of each other's space, which I find very refreshing. And so Wednesday night, I'll be bringing back a statement regarding masks in the city of Albany. I understood that our governor said that she's going to let the new local municipalities deal with that, address the issue. And so I'll be working with staff and the city manager and my council to come up with a statement for that. And Councilor Kopczynski?
Just as a side note, and maybe it's already common knowledge, I don't recall it being mentioned, but the city mayor is now on the board of directors of the Albany Historic Carousel and Museum.
Oh,
Great.
Thank you. And it's been great. And thank you, Councilor. And another thing is my neighbor drove a 1960 what?
19, we need to go into this?
Well, I'm just saying, he's
1965 three-cylinder, two-stroke, 48 horsepower.
He's my hero.
Front-wheel drive, 4 on the tree, Saab, towing a little trailer, drove it from Albany, Oregon to Albany, New York, and back.
This guy. So
And I survived.
welcome back.
Thank you.
So thank you.
If
And
anybody's
with that note,
If anybody's terminally bored, I've got a story I can send you.
fantastic. And with that note, I'll turn it over to the city manager for his report.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I don't think you got to Councilor Novak.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Matilda, Councilor Novak, say something. I'm sorry. Councilor Novak,
Yeah,
please,
no.
anything?
It's all right. I didn't actually have anything this evening, so
No, I
that's all right.
I sincerely apologize. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Y'all throw something at me, please, next time. City manager.
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have one thing for you, and that is that I will miss this Wednesday's council meeting, but in my stead will be the lady in the back of the room there, Chris Bailey, will be acting city manager on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And I'll be up in Washington State representing the International City Management Association with the Washington City Management Association. And I look forward to being back.
Fantastic.
We'll make sure we bring all the problems Wednesday for Miss Bailey.
So I think with that note, thank you, city manager. We're going to adjourn the meeting at 5:15 p.m. on August 9th, my son's 30th birthday. Thank you.
wow.